Peekaboo, he sees you. Hey guys, this is AwesomeJohn22 and I'm coming at you with another review today. Today we are looking at this guy here, RID Transformers Prime Voyager class Megatron. And I'm just going to say it right off the bat, guys. I don't like everything they've done with this figure, but overall I am a fan. And overall I really do believe that this is the definitive version of Transformers Prime Megatron that we are going to get here in the States. And I'm going to do my very best to explain to you guys why I think that is. Now, we are starting with the vehicle mode, because personally, it's better to end up in robot mode, I think. And it is also such a pain to transform this thing from robot mode to vehicle mode. I actually had to look up Optibotimus' review of this guy, because I know he always does a reverse transformation, to even get past a couple of different spots. This guy has a fiddly as frack transformation. And his transformation from vehicle mode to robot mode is fiddly enough. His transformation back is just ridiculous. But there is a lot going on with this figure that is very good. I'm going to start out by showing you his weapon. As we all know, Megatron's weapon is a fusion cannon, and it's always very powerful, and it is really in there. It's kind of that one weapon everybody fears. This, of course, being an RID figure, got a Powerizer weapon. And you know how I feel about Powerizer weapons by now. So I'm going to show you. I did mod this weapon. And the modding I did leave this LED bit loose. I'm going to eventually remember to fix that with some super glue. But it also, you see, what it used to do is you would push this would flip around, light some stuff up, and then it would spring back. That was stupid, because this is his blade, and his blade is supposed to stay deployed, right? So what I did is I took all this apart. It wasn't very hard. There's some screws here and some screws there. I don't even think I had to remove those. I think I just had to remove these. Took out the spring, so now you can do this, and it stays out. And it's not perfectly cohesive because there is still this little split. But he's got his blade, and it's very nice. I like it a lot. You can see here, the fusion cannon looks pretty good. I'm pretty sure the LED is still in there. I need to get it out, because that would be fun to have. But yeah, good toy. Good weapon for the toy. And I really hated it. Let me put it this way. I really hated it before I got to the modding, and now I really love it. Now that the modding's done. I kind of feel the same way about RID Optimus Prime's weapon, which I will show you if ever I get to reviewing him, and hopefully I will soon. There is a second weapon that came with Megatron. It's this thing that you'll see what purpose it serves later. And for vehicle mode storage, you're supposed to attach it like this to the fusion cannon, and then attach the fusion cannon via this post here, and then straighten it because it doesn't want to be straight. And that looks silly because now he can't fire his fusion cannon because there's a thing in the way. So I typically do not leave this on him in vehicle mode. I typically set it to the side, which I do not usually display this guy in vehicle mode anyway. I'm going to take a look at the vehicle mode real quick, show you some of the highlights of it. It is pretty flat. It's pretty flat considering it's got all of this underneath here, which is nice. The wings are a little narrow though. I'm not 100% sold on the wings. But I really like how these bits up front end up shaping the front of his vehicle mode. And I do like this does look quite a bit like his vehicle mode in the series, which is nice. Even right down to the head showing, which I like Cybertronian alt modes with the head showing. I'm just going to say it right there. And I'm going to explain to you why. I know a lot of people don't like it because they're supposed to be robots in disguise, right? But they're not robots in disguise on Cybertron. They're robots, period. They don't have to be in disguise. And I think a really headstrong guy like Megatron would very proudly display his face in either mode. And because Megatron doesn't care about disguising himself on Earth, it makes sense that he would keep that motif on Earth by keeping his Cybertronian alt mode. I never really bought that Megatron would hide his face ever. Period. So I like it. I like it a lot on Megatron. I don't always like it on other characters, but I like it a lot on Megatron. But yeah, a couple of issues I do have with this mode, aside from the fact that the wings are very slim, is that what will be his arms kind of come off quite a bit in the back, and leave this kind of gap here. If they came up all the way and kind of filled this in, I wouldn't mind it as much. Also, there is a prevalent issue with this figure in general, and that is his paint scheme. If we zoom in here, and I'm going to try to get this to show up on my crappy camera, you can see there is some gold kind of flaking swirled through the plastic, and silver flaking, rather. And there is some silver paint here. But overall, this guy is just gray plastic, even though Megatron is silver, very clearly silver in the cartoon. And the first edition Megatron was very clearly painted silver and looked a lot better for it. And while I think this is a better looking toy overall, I really wish he had gotten a similar paint job. And there are some versions of him out now, I believe, that are more silver. Fiddling with the toy as I talk. And maybe you guys would rather pick up one of those. You can always customize him. It's not that hard to cover gray plastic with silver paint, especially if you get like a paint marker. But this is what we get. I don't like it 100%. I also don't mind it all that much, though, because, I mean, they were really having to go through a lot of cost-cutting measures at the time this guy came out, and it's only marginally getting better now. So, really, this is kind of the best I think we could have hoped for, and I personally think it looks a lot better than the Takara release, which was a, what do they call them? They had the little Target Master guys. But they had all the extra pegs all over them, so you could attach the Target Master guys to them. And I just think that breaks up what is otherwise a very sleek-looking figure. Despite all of this guy's flaws, he does end up looking like a pretty sleek little jet. Now, there is one other fundamental issue with this guy. I did mention his transformation from robot mode to vehicle mode is very fiddly, and then it's the same going the other way. That is a problem. I'm not a huge fan of fiddly robot modes, but I can almost excuse it on this guy because a lot of the things they do with his transformation is very clever. So let's get into the transformation. First of all, we're going to want to remove the weapon, which is going to deploy itself because I'm an idiot. And once again, it is really in there. So remove that. Now we're going to come down here, and we're going to just kind of unpeg everything. You'll see right here, this is pegged in here. Unpeg that, come up here to the wing, and unpeg it, and that kind of frees up this entire leg section. Bring it down, do the same thing over here. Now we're going to come up here, bring these back, so that we can bring this piece up. And you can see what I mean about it being fiddly. Already I'm having to move things out of the way to get to other parts of this vehicle mode for the transformation. Get his weapon out of the way so I stop bumping into it. I'm also going to adjust my light a little bit. There we go. It's much better. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to come back here, and you can see his arms are pegged in there to these giant pegs. We're going to unpeg them, then we're going to unpeg them from each other. So we're going to come around here. This is brought up, yeah. And we're going to bring his hips down. Oops. It's a very thick, or very stiff joint. I'm not sure if that's the same on everybody's figure, but it is on mine. Bring his hips down, and kind of bring them into place here. Then rotate his legs into position. Come down here to his feet, bring his toes forward, and his heels back, which they are sort of attached to each other, so you have to kind of move them both at the same time. Now we're going to come here to what were his wings, fold these in on both sides, and we're going to rotate these into place and just accordion them down to make the insides of his legs. And there you have his legs completed. Come up here. Let me zoom out again. Re-angle my shot. Come up here, take these, flip them around. Now we're going to separate this. Bring it out like that. Bring this up into this spot here. And come to his arms. Rotate them into place. Bring all of this down, like so. Bring these up to form his chest. Now from here, we can straighten out his arms and bring these bits up onto his arms to make his shoulders. And they do not attach to his arms. Now we're going to come back here, making sure I did everything right and feeling like I didn't do something right. That looks right. And kind of angle this backpack however we want it. Finally, we're going to come down here to his hands, fold out his hands, and then rotate his forearms into position. And there we go. And whew, I expected that to be a lot more difficult on screen than it actually was. Having to do that from behind a camera, I was not looking forward to it, because like I said, his transformation is very fiddly, but what you get once you're done transforming him is a very cool looking robot mode that I really enjoy having in my collection. In robot mode, Transformers Prime Megatron is kind of awesome. He's imposing. He looks like his show model, aside from the kibble on the back. He is pretty much everything you would expect a Voyager Megatron toy to be, other than his still somewhat bland paint job. Though, overall, I think he really does a good job of looking like Megatron. He has, if I can get this to actually work, there we go. He has a fantastic head sculpt that really looks like Megatron. I really love it. He's got the purple for the Dark Energon all throughout his body. And again, even though he is not painted silver, he does still have that silver flake swirled all through his plastic. The only thing I question about the design of this figure is you will see in his hands and feet this sort of brown colored plastic, which is the same brown colored plastic as we see in his weapon, his second weapon, and in his fusion cannon. And while I like it, I like the color, it doesn't really seem to fit much with the overall motif that this figure seems to be going for. He can hold his weapons, of course. The fusion cannon, as usual, is plugged into his arm and becomes an arm-mounted weapon. That is just classic Megatron, and this figure pulls it off nicely. His other weapon, however, is a little bit different, and this is where I think this weapon actually comes into play very well. And I'm going to show you, we are going to zoom in on his other hand, very slowly because my camera's lagging. And what we do here is, you will see there is a peg hole right above his hand. And that corresponds to this peg here. He will hold this in his hand like so, and then we peg it in to that peg hole to hold it in place, and now Megatron has this kind of punching weapon. It looks kind of like a combination of like a punch dagger and like an iron knuckle, and I really like it. I really like the way that looks with the figure overall. Now he doesn't just have the cannon, he has this other weapon as well, and if he needs 2 melee weapons, you can always deploy his blade on his cannon, which is silver in the show, and I might paint it silver eventually, but overall I think that looks pretty good. I really like the way this guy looks in his robot mode. His robot mode is pretty much flawless. And I say pretty much because I did mention there is some kibble on his back. It's very blatant. And it is so blatant because Megatron has no kibble on his back in the series. I believe these kind of vent type looking things are there, but these definitely aren't. And there's a couple things you can do with them. You can leave them up how I have them so they kind of blend in with the shoulder pads, or you can fold them all the way down. And what that looks like from the front now is that he's kind of wearing some kind of cape. And I personally like the way that looks in both configurations. I don't like that they're there, however, as they are not on the figure or on the model at all in the show, and it breaks up the look of the figure. Now there is something else you can do with these. If you look here, I'm going to try to get this so you can see it. These pieces are just attached via these little post thingies, and what you can do is you can just pop them right off. And it causes absolutely no harm to the figure at all whatsoever. And let me do that on both of them real quick. And what you're left with is a much more show-accurate Megatron without those back wings at all. And while I don't personally pose him that way, I know a lot of people who do. A lot of people do reviews and have shown this off, and I think it looks perfectly fine, and it's a perfectly reasonable option if it's something you feel inclined to do. Articulation for this guy is pretty much what you would expect nowadays. He has a ball-jointed shoulder, though the shoulder pads do get in the way of it a bit. A full rotation at the elbow, and a rotation at the lower arm. His head is on a ball joint that can look up and down, and can rotate, though it can only rotate about so far simply due to the design of his head. He has no waist articulation, but he does have full hip articulation, including a thigh rotation. He has very good 90-degree bend at the knee, and he even has a little bit of rotation in his toes, though honestly they're a little bit loose, and moving them a lot only serves to kind of destabilize the figure overall. But overall, it's pretty much what you would expect these days. Nothing really surprising, nothing really out of the ordinary. It's overall very good, and it adds to the viability of the figure because now you can pose him in pretty much any way you want. And it makes your Megatron figure a lot more threatening. And I really enjoy it. I really enjoy, like I've said, I really enjoy everything about this robot mode. It's a good robot mode. There are still, however, a couple of problems. First of all, the transparent purple in the forearms doesn't really do it for me. It looks better than the transparent plastic in a lot of these Power Risers figures, but it still feels out of place to me, even on Megatron, who has dark energon flowing through his body. There's also the issue of his hips. They don't really want to stay where they're supposed to stay. And it's not bad. It does peg into place. If I actually show you, it does peg into place. It just doesn't peg into place very well. And that is compounded by the fact that this piece here doesn't want to stay in place either. I don't keep calling this guy the definitive Transformers Prime Megatron for nothing. There is one specific reason why I love this figure so much, and that is that he scales beautifully. Look at that. You can see he is just a tad bit shorter than the new Voyager class Optimus Prime, which is a much larger version of Optimus. You can see Starscream standing next to him is just about a head shorter, as he should be. You can see Soundwave at Deluxe class scale is much shorter than Megatron, so as is Bumblebee. And then you can see a human figure down here to kind of show how he would look next to the lower class human masses that he likes to lord over so much, and it's good. You can see Jack here stands about up to Megatron's knee, which is about what you would expect. He's beautifully scaled, and he looks beautiful with these other figures. If he were more silver, I still think he'd look better, but he looks good. When you put him next to them, he just looks good. And that is why I think this is the best version of this toy we're going to get. And maybe down the line we will get a version of this particular mold that is better painted. I don't know. As of right now, though, I think his paint job suits him fine. And I think the fact that he just looks so good next to the other figures in the line kind of makes up for any issues you can have with this figure overall. He is worth buying. He's worth buying now, especially since he's been out for a while. And he's kind of in that mid-ground where he's not quite super hard to find, but he's old enough that his price is going to be low when you find him at retail. So it's that sweet spot that you need to hit if you're a budget collector like I am. So really, this is the best time for you to go out and get him. Don't wait too much longer, though, or it's going to become really hard to find this guy, and you're going to have to pay up pricing for him, and that's never good. So guys, really there isn't much more to say about Transformers Prime Robots in Disguise Megatron. He is a great figure, worth buying, worth adding to your collection, and I wholly recommend him. This has been Awesome John 22, and I will talk to you guys later.